I'm trying to improve my hiking performance specifically. Because when it comes to prioritizing movement efficiency, I said it gets overlooked. And I think it's because when it's easy to think about work capacity is in like, or if I'm improving my work capacity, I'm improving my ability just to do more work, which it is. Is probably the main aspect of work capacity. But on the other side of that, kind of the same thing, but different, you can do this. Improving your work capacity is like doing the same amount of work, but it just takes you significantly less time. You're just more efficient. You put in less effort. You waste less energy. You're just more fluid, more smooth. And not only does that help you just be more productive, like you do the work faster, but it also reduces that unnecessary stress. And so now we're reducing our injury risk just because we're being more efficient with our movement patterns. So there's a couple things, what I have four things written down that I want to touch on specifically when it comes to just hiking more efficiently. And the first one, we've already talked about this on a previous episode, is just the fact that like how much hiking is a high volume activity. Like if you think about, well, you can just even look at your phone or your watch, look how many steps you're taking on a normal shift. We're talking 10, 15, sometimes over 20,000 steps in a shift, with the vast majority of those being, under heavy load on some awkward, steep terrain. So if you have poor efficiency, if you're not moving well, times that by thousands, and that is all of the unnecessary, unwanted stress that you're just adding onto your skeletal system, your muscular system, all of these different systems. Like little improvements in your movement efficiency go a long, long way. Because like I said, we're timesing by thousands, and that's just on one shift. Times that by 14, and then a full season, and then a career. You can scale it out huge. Just have like little things to making each step as good as it can possibly be has a massive ROI. I've got a couple examples of how to improve each step. One is just like, do I take big steps or do I take small steps? Like, I know some of these are going to sound like common sense of just like, whatever, it's just a step. But man, like I said, if you're taking just 5 or 10 big steps when you could be taking 20 to 25 smaller steps, think about it in terms of like a weight room exercise. Think about how much easier it is to do just like a step up going up just a flight of stairs versus a step up going onto a 20-inch box and doing a set of 10. A set of 10 on normal stairs versus 10 on a 20-inch box is massively different. So if you can reduce 2 reps here, 2 reps there, 3 reps there, and just make those less taxing, that's going to pay off. Like you're just saving yourself. I mean, I'll finish up my thought with this. Like think about how many reps you do in a typical workout, right? A typical lower body strength workout. You might do, 10 to 15 total sets. I don't know, maybe more depending on what your goal of the session is. Think about how many, again, we're talking 10, 15, 20,000 steps in a shift. You can easily reduce like 10 to 12 sets worth of exercises or movements just by stepping a little bit smarter than you were. Just you almost took out like a whole workout out of your day. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's like how my brain works when I'm out there hiking and I'm like, okay, I could take this big step or I could just do a small one, boom, I'm in the same place. And that was easy versus like the step is gonna, like, I got to really push off my leg. I got to brace my core. I got to put a lot of effort into this one step. Like when you're out there hiking, Justin, what do you think about your stride length, I guess?
So I'm on the same page. And the general principle that I think we're talking about here is mechanical advantage. So if I'm in a squat rack, I have a barbell on my back and I'm going for a squat rep and I have 300 pounds on the bar. If I'm going to do a quarter depth squat, I'm just going to hinge just slightly and come back up. I can do that all day. That is zero effort on my part. I can pretty much use that mechanical advantage and get through a good amount of 300-pound squat reps. But you ask me to go ass to grass, you get parallel with the floor, I'm caving right now. Like I haven't squatted in a bit, I'm done. That is a ridiculous amount of force that you have to produce, a ridiculous amount of torque that has to be produced at the level of our knee and our hip to get that bar back up. So if I take that same principle, you can kind of think of it like a doorway too. If you push on the outside of a door towards like the very end of the handle, way easy to open up that door. But if you push from the center of the door, immediately feels like more resistance, right? You have way more mechanical advantage when you're acting in those smaller ranges of motion and have way less flexion at the hip, at the knee, at the ankle. If you are taking larger steps and you're getting into deeper and deeper ranges of motion, for one, way more torque needs to be required, which requires way more force, which requires way more muscular output, which requires way more metabolic demands. Like that's kind of the series that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Like that force has to come from energy production at some level, and the lesser amount of energy that I have to produce over 10, 20, 30,000 steps, money. That's staving off all the job. The job isn't to go hike, it's to go work. The job is we're just getting to the work site. So if we're talking about strategies to stave off fatigue, smaller steps, greater mechanical advantage, and putting yourself in those greater positions to generate the torque required without putting your muscles at these really inefficient spots. Your muscles, when they're at those large ranges of motion, they're pulled apart so far that torque you got to create, it's massively harder. They function way less efficiently at those large ranges than they do when they're a little bit more in like an optimal mid-level, slightly shortened state. So that's the kind of the way that I'm thinking of like my steps, my activation, my force production while I'm hiking is just, man, if I take a large step here, that's like 2-3 times more energy cost. That's 2 to 3 times more torque I have to produce from my joints. Just overall, that's kind of the route that I'm thinking while I'm hiking.
Yeah. And like there are times where you have to step a certain way. Like
Sure.
the terrain is going to dictate what you have to do. I think just so we're clear, like we're talking about, just being more intentional with every single step that you're taking, right? Not just like blindly just following the person in front of you, like head down, or you're looking around and you're just suffering, but like still being intentional. And like this next one I want to talk about, again, is very detailed. A lot of people are going to be like, that doesn't even matter. But it's the concept of like staying linear with your steps and staying in the sagittal plane of motion. So not going side to side, not going diagonal. Because if you think about just your normal strength training exercises, right? You're much, much stronger in the sagittal plane. Okay. You can squat, lunge a lot more going forwards, backwards, or straight up and down. But if you start to go laterally, you start to go 45-degree angles, you lose a lot of that strength because your center of gravity is off. The stability demands are increased. So little things. So like even just if you have to kind of sidestep a little bit, like just turning your body so you're squared up to where you're about to step, your shoulders, belly button, hips, knees, everything's in a line. You kind of just rotate, take a small step, rotate back, take a step, instead of kind of doing like a diagonal side thing. Again, it might seem really, really small, really insignificant, but those little things add up. So, just again, being intentional about kind of just your body angle, when you're stepping over obstacles, down trees or something, or you got to move around, you're going up and down rocks. I think the downhill side especially is a role there. So to sum up that one is just stay linear, stay sagittal, stay forwards, backwards, try not to go diagonal or too side to side on that one.
One word that I think might paint a further picture surrounding that is the concept of stiffness. I don't know if that like kind of hones in for you, Austin, but that's one way that whenever I'm doing any hiking tasks, I have to move my ankles, knees, and hips to propel myself forward. But any other movements that are not linear, I can try to control with the concept of stiffness, with these co-contractions where I'm just locking up. Like if you're about to do some kind of rotational task, you're usually not just free flowing, spine's moving whatever way it wants. You're locking in, you're bracing your core. You're making sure that pelvis, that spine, they're tight. You have a lot of pressure built up. You're doing whatever it is. Maybe you take a deep breath in, lock in the core. But that's another aspect of hiking that I think is super maybe underrated or not talked about as much, is that concept of just stiffness, at least at the level of our spine. Because if we're moving, swaying forward, back, side to side, again, just more shear forces, more damage, more metabolic costs. And as we sway, what do you think happens to the lower body? It's like we're the leaning tower of Pisa, where we have a 60-pound pack on our back and we sway just like a couple centimeters to the right. That's like immediate demand for more recruitment, more stability. So if we have the ability to concentrate on core stability, making sure that the hips and the spine are stacked, that in return is going to just decrease so much potential cost energy-wise on the pattern itself. But of course, if you've never been taught how to recruit, brace your core, and have not necessarily stiff movement, but stiffening up certain parts of the body that don't have to move. I don't want people to think of the term stiffness and think rigid, awkward motion. I want it to be fluid where the joints are actually moving, but whatever doesn't need to be moving, let's lock that shit in place so we don't have to accommodate it.
Yeah. I call it dynamic stability. If you do train, like if you train it in PT, it carries over so well to, especially in a load carriage scenario where, you got 40, 50, 60 pounds, you got a chainsaw on one side, whatever. The last point that I had is my favorite one to talk about when it comes to biomechanics. I think people don't talk about it enough, but it's this concept of push versus pull, which is basically like recruiting certain muscles. Most people, from me, just from my experience talking with other people and trying to help them with this concept, they know hiking is like all quads and calves, and it's because you're going uphill, and so you have to push yourself up. Every time you push up, you're getting to that knee extension. It's all quads, right? When you're just focused all on knee extension. And then, especially if you're wearing loggers, but even if you're not wearing loggers, but you're on something steep, like you kind of have that, like your heel, it comes off the ground because you're just like pushing off the ball of your foot to get yourself up. All of that pushing is, like I said, it's all calves and it's all quads. And I think a lot of people, they're almost exclusively pushing themselves up the hill, and then their quads burn out and their calves burn out, and then they're just done. Where I've had so much success in my hiking performance is balancing push versus pull. So there are times where I'll be pushing myself up. I'm using my quads. I'm using my calves. I'm essentially propelling myself forward. But then, when I feel like like those muscles are starting to get fatigued, I'll switch to pulling myself up the mountain. So when I'm pulling, I'm now using my hamstrings and glutes to get myself up. So it's a lot easier to visually show this, but when I try to explain it verbally, think about like imagine you take your step and it's like you're almost clawing the ground. So you grab the ground with your foot and then you almost like claw yourself, like almost like pull yourself back. And like that is what's going to propel the next step forward. So you claw, pull. And if you do it right, you will feel it in your hamstrings and glutes because they will start to blow up, which is good because you're giving your quads and calves a rest. Now, a lot of this is terrain dependent. Like there are some, especially when it gets to a point where it's so steep, like you have to push yourself up. Like you just can't pull in those situations. But that's something that's helped me so much and has helped a lot of people I've coached, is helping them understand push versus pull and helping them kind of translate, weight room exercises that we're doing, lunges versus like single leg RDLs. And like, hey, see, I want how you feel when you do those exercises is how I want you to feel on this hike. You're just switching back and forth from lunges to RDLs. And, once one gets tired, switch to the other one. And then, you won't blow yourself up as much. You kind of have that balance between the two.
Just to add another layer to the weight room movements, one way that you can probably hit whether or not you're doing a push or a pull, at least with the case of lower body movements, stick to that. If your shins are vertical and you're doing some kind of a squat pattern, some kind of a hinge pattern, it's probably going to be coming from the hip. Like if your shins stay vertical, where are you bending at? It's going to be at the hip complex. You're getting the glutes and the hamstrings way more involved at that point to produce that vertical movement. If those shins come forward, you're in some kind of knee extension. That torso is probably a little bit more vertical. So that's like that concept of vertical shins is kind of the way that you might be able to anticipate whether or not you're using glutes, hamstrings way more or making it more quad dominant. If in your lunge, that knee is driving over your toes, it's probably going to be a pretty quad dominant squat. If you can see your toes, you're probably hinging at the hip way more. And that's just one way for like a cue. If you're trying to incorporate push versus pull with those patterns, just pay attention to the shins, just see where those are at.
Yep. And again, just to say the same thing in a different way, like just kind of paying attention to where your knees are relative to your toes. So like if you're wearing loggers, right? If your knees are over that big heel, you're probably more into that hinge. If those knees are going over your laces towards your toes, you're probably more into your quads. So you can kind of pay attention pay attention to your movement that way. But yeah, to summarize all of that is biomechanics and mechanical efficiency plays such a massive, massive role when it comes to hiking performance and reducing fatigue and just being able to go longer.